Welcome to the PlayCreate Podcast. I'm Kirsten Gunnerud.
And I'm Jill Johnson.
And we are so excited to have you here today. As some of you who've been listening know, this is a place where Jill and I explore all things creative and play related and how that relates to life, work, parenting, really anything under the sun. And explore how we can use the tools, the role, the experience of play and creativity to take things to the next level, have more fun. And what am I missing there? What else does
I think the big thing is that today we're playing a little because we're both in two different locations.
Yes.
And so Kirsten's in beautiful, sunny Florida, correct?
Not for long. I get on
and I'm in beautiful, snowy Park City. So we're in two different realms. So we wanted to try playing from this kind of space to see how we do. So right now we're creating a different way of connecting, and we will see what happens because we know that we are in process.
Awesome. So Jill, do you remember what we left with last week? We invited people to...
Yes, we asked people to talk about time. So last week we were talking about how we use time and timing in improv, timing in life. And one of the things we asked people to do was look at the way that they use time. So for example, on the spectrum, there might be people that really just block out their time so that they have everything down to the minutes.
Right.
And then there's people like me that for a long time that if I didn't just flow, I was thinking that I was constrained. And then I discovered how using a little bit of time management, blocking out time, and then showing up and allowing flow to happen in that. A great example is that I think we talked a little bit about before kids, after kids. So for those of you that don't have kids, just bear with us for a second. But I look back at my younger self and wonder what I did with all my time, because I am just amazed at how little time I do have, because I want to be there for my family and show up in all these ways. But then I'm also trying to be here for my business. I want to be here for my friends. I want to be there for my relationship. So there's all these things that pull. And so now what I'm noticing is that I have a limited amount of time. So when I have that, how do I block it so that I can show up to that? So like we talked about the podcast and how we've put Tuesday mornings as our time. And what happens in that time happens. And we both show up fully engaged in that moment. So we were talking about asking people to show up and just look at how they're using their time. What things really spark them? Where do they feel timelessness? Where do they feel like, oh my gosh, I have all the time in the world? And where does it just feel like, gosh, it's hard? And sometimes you just have to show up to the hard work and use that time for that. But where does it also feel timeless? Because then that helps us orient our compass to where we want to go and what we want to do more of, or how we allocate a little bit more time to that. And from that, we were going to go into the center of your 3 circles of letting go, noticing more, and why does this always happen to me?
Let go, notice more, and use everything.
Using everything. And what happens when we're in the middle of that?
Yeah. Yes. So in your exploration of time this week and just noticing what we invited everyone else to notice, what did you notice? Did anything come up for you?
Well, today is a really great example of time because it's snowing in Park City, which even though all of us live here, everybody forgets how to drive the first snowstorm.
Yes.
And everybody forgets about snow tires. And so coming to the studio this morning was an 1.5-hour adventure because where I live, everyone was off the road. So it was kind of like Frogger. So there's a couple things that can happen in that space. You can get crazy frustrated and maybe go into getting in an accident or something worse. Or you can just be like, this is where my time needs to be right now. Other places where I noticed this week is just allocating the time where I can show up to what needs to get done. And I keep noticing, one of the things I keep noticing is that I want to be more aware of what I really need to get done versus what I perceive needs to get done that day. I still have way too many things on my list, and I'll notice that I'm not using the time as efficiently as I want. And I'll notice I'm staring out into space, or I'm just doing busy work. So I'd really like to be more aware of how I can get into that creative, juicy work versus just spinning my wheels, which means saying no to some stuff.
Yeah. So my experience was along those lines, which was fascinating. So I had getting from Utah to Florida, especially this side of Florida, is 2 planes and 6+ hours of sitting on planes and not including airport time and all that kind of thing. And so I love my airplane time because I just like go into my zone. The lack of too many interruptions and things like that is my amazing time to just get through a ton of stuff. So I had all this stuff planned that I was going to accomplish on my flight down here. And sure enough, the 2 people who sit next to me end up being 2 of the most amazing people I've ever met. We spent the entire 4-hour flight from Utah to Atlanta completely engaged in this mind-blowingly awesome conversation. And we do a lot of similar things, and it was amazing. And so the whole, like, not much, but a little bit in the back of my head, I'm thinking, but I've got to get this done, but I've got to get this done. But at the same time, it was just such a cool thing to meet these people and have that opportunity to have that time together. So then on my second flight, I don't even acknowledge the person next to me. I get on the plane. I immediately start trying to get some work done. And I did get some work done. But then towards the very end of the flight, I had all my bracelets on. He suddenly pays attention to me too. I think he was in a similar spot, and he sees my bracelets and he taps them, and he's like, and then he shows me his, and he has almost exactly the same thing on his arm. And we start talking, and this guy also works in the same kind of business we do with play and creativity and alignment and helping work with organizations and people on some of that stuff. And we start this conversation, and it turns out he and his wife, 2 or 3 houses down from my parents in Minnesota. Like, the number of crossover points that we had was mind-blowing. And I could have had 2 hours on this flight learning and talking and exploring with him that I didn't have because I didn't pay attention to him. Mm-hmm. So, but it's great. We're going to still communicate. But it was that you hear all the time that need to focus on the time and not let anything get in your way. But if I hadn't let that get in my way, I wouldn't have met these 2 amazing connections that could lead to who knows what in the future in terms of things we could collaborate on or create forward with together. And so and the work didn't get done, and it's still not totally done, and it's 6 days later. And so I don't fully have an answer for that yet.
Well, no, but I think that's really important to say. You know, Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability and trust, one of the biggest things in relationships is to be able to really trust is when we choose to turn around. So there was an example of this guy that he was watching a bunch of movies, and he was in a really good part. And he really wanted to keep doing that. So he's going to just go to the bathroom, brush his teeth, and get in bed and watch all of them. And then he sees his wife, and she's crying. She just looks down. And he has a moment in time to be like, well, I really want to watch those movies. What do we do? Or I can go in and I can choose this.
Right.
And so I think there's a really important moment in those times where we're choosing the timing of the busy work or connection. And one of the biggest things is just turning towards, you know, we talk about our inner compass. So Kirsten and I are noticing that we have a language, and we're trying to be more aware of when we're just in our little language and speaking our own little stuff, where we should really reach out. So we're going to try to be more aware of that. But when we talk about inner compass, we talk about when we're trusting our instincts to follow something that feels more expansive, meaning, do I expand in this moment or am I contracting? Is my heart kind of doing this? Which you might have both happening in that moment, because you feel the pull of like, well, this is my zone time. I'm in an airplane. No one can touch me. I can do what I need to do to get done. Yeah. Or, wow, someone just piqued my interest and all of a sudden I'm turning towards. I think more often than not, turning towards the relationship is way more important than getting things done. Yeah. And that's what we keep noticing as we do our work, is most of the time we just want to be heard. People just want to be witnessed. They want to be seen. And we want to be seen, And so I think I will opt on turning toward unless I really need time to myself, which is really important to know when, hey, I just need my inner hermit. I'm going to just put on my hermit right now. I'm going to go in and I just want to be alone. But that's my moment that I need to be really aware of. But I think a lot of times is turning towards, and this is so important in relationships, because I know there are many times where I see Matt and I will just be like, blinders on. I'm going to go do my thing. I really don't want to engage right now. But it made me think of, well, more trust is going to happen if I turn towards that person, even though it might be hard, even though it's taking me out of my little zone. I think I'm more apt to turn towards someone right now than I am to turn away. Yeah. And that might be something about timing, because sometimes the timing in that moment is like, wow, like you said, I never expected this to happen. Never expected in this moment to actually have a conversation back to back. And more often than not, that's what happens on airplanes, because there's something about this insular, you might not ever see each other again. It's just in that moment. And you just get a little bit deeper in conversations than you would just walking by or being on the phone or just passing a stranger.
Yeah, if we had met in any other context, and it turns out in both situations, these are people that we had the potential to have crossed paths at different conferences and other places that we never had. But if we had, we would have never had that time. It would have been handing a card and, oh yeah, great. Okay, let's, and that would have been it. The other thing, how I've been looking at all this lately, especially, or just kind of a new way of thinking about it for me, is looking at what I'm investing in and where I'm investing. And so that time spent, whether it's with your husband or your kids or these strangers on a plane when you have work to do, that is time that's invested, not just wasted. And when you're investing your time, when you're investing whatever resources it may be, I think that's always going to lead to a good place, and just trusting that the timing of everything else is happening and will work out. And I mean, I stayed up later this week to get some stuff done, didn't mind it, because I'm so excited about everything else that just seems to be showing up lately, right? So it makes it, ironically, the lack of getting that stuff done on the plane in some ways made me more excited to get that stuff done when I got off the plane, because it just seems like the more you step into doing what you're really meant to be doing and owning it and showing up to it, the more these amazing things show up around and with it sometimes.
Well, and like going back to your model, like you're just noticing more. Yeah. So when we have our blinders on and we're just trying to get it done, it's really hard to see all the other factors that may be around us and available and on offer. Yes. And so it's one of those things to be like, well, what's on offer in this moment and what needs to be done. And it's hard. Deadlines are real and work is real and getting stuff done.
It's real.
What is?
Paying bills.
Yes, paying bills. Oh my gosh, money. And talk about investing your time. Like, it's a hard thing, because when our time is being pulled from so many different things, and one of those being paying the bills, it's consuming. So, one of the big things that will keep me up all night is the spinning of like how business runs. How do you pay the rent? How do you pay what needs to be fixed? How do you pay for supplies? How do you pay for payroll? How do you pay loans? Blah, 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 blah. And it just keeps going. And it's literally come to the saying, well, okay, I can't fix it in this moment. So I just have to keep showing up and playing into each moment as it comes.
Yes.
Because it's not, we talked about grand slams, we talked about Moneyball, we talked about all these things, but it really is a moment by moment thing. How do I make this work right now? And then move to the next thing.
And that's too where we talked last time a little bit about the energy that we put into things. And when our energy, again, thinking of our own energy as an investment, when our energy is going towards worrying about things that are, we don't know yet, that are in the future, that are wherever they may be, versus our energy going towards what is in front of us in that moment, that's a lot of energy that we've just expended that went nowhere. And oftentimes never goes towards anything that's helpful anyway.
Yeah.
Versus when we can focus that energy. And I think that takes us to that center place in between the three circles. So you've got notice more, you've got let go, and you've got use everything. And they're a Venn diagram, if you will. They're three circles that overlap each other. And in the middle of where they overlap is what Rob calls everything's an offer, or what I often call is everything's an opportunity. But the more you are in that moment, and the more in that moment, you're continually kind of going through this, eventually it becomes not even a conscious process, but of letting go, noticing more, and using everything. The more you can create in that moment to then take you forward into the next one. And so what I think a lot of us do when we aren't using one or all of those three circles is we are expending massive amounts of resources. We're trying to go in and like control and take care of and make things happen, again, using crazy amounts of energy and resources to do it. When we just do those three things, the amount of energy, resources, and everything else it takes to actually make things move is greatly reduced, which is, it's fascinating how it works. And that's where I'm going to jump to the pause, if this is making sense. So Rob also has a book that he's written called Do Pause. And his whole thing with the, even with the three circles, is pausing. And so when we pause long enough to let go and notice more, that's when we start shifting into that ability to work more with what's there, that everything's, using everything. And so we forget to pause. We forget to take a breath. We let our work, our life, whatever's showing up, take us on, this wave, or we're under the wave and just being crashed around by it. And I think pausing, actually, to use that wave analogy, lifts us up on top of the wave.
Yeah.
We can see what we're in, and we can see what's going on, and we can better evaluate and analyze and figure out what we want to do with it, versus where most of us tend to put ourselves, and I'm really good at it, is in the middle of all the waves just crashing all around, where you can't see anything and you can't do anything with it. But taking that pause is almost like naturally lifting your body or your being up to the top of the wave, where you can get the perspective and the view. And
yeah, I think the thing about pause, the other thing about pausing is when we're in that space, we're coming back into the here and now.
Yeah.
So let's kind of play with that word pause, like the pause button, or, if you have a track going and you push pause, it's because you're trying to recall or just maybe stop where you are so you can go do something else, or anything that might be. So for me, pause really right now is getting back in my body, getting back into the here and now. Because what happens is the mental chatter just will start taking over, and it will pull you out of your body. It will pull you out of the here and now. So how do we come back to here and now? And ways that I do that is I'll literally get up and take a step back.
Yeah.
I'll step back, just because in Gestalt, this whole theory is getting out of one place into another. Yeah. So that pauses, or whether it's like you were showing your bracelet. So I might take one of my malas and just start breathing per bead, in and out, just to get me back here and now. It's really hard because when you are in that panic place, or let's say, this morning I found out that one of our dear family friends passed away. And there's that moment where you're just like, you lose your breath, and it's like it's stuck in your throat. So I kind of go back to, how do I get back into breathing? How do I get back into my body? How do I not dissociate and go 10 miles ahead of myself, so that I'm right here? So when we talk about pause, there's that pause. Yeah. And then there's also the pause when things are moving it's really fluid. Yeah. So there's the pause when you're at the bottom of the wave where it's crashing, and it's literally just taking one breath. You just need to get a breath. And then there's the other pause where it is that timelessness. Everything's kind of moving. It's kind of like Matrix. If you've ever seen Matrix, there's this moment when all of a sudden Neo, and it kind of changed, I think, cinema forever, is when the bullets start coming into him and he falls all the way back and you can see him and they're just moving by him. That to me is another pause where all of a sudden it's like I have this lucid awareness of what's all around me and I can pull from it, and it's not all the time. Yeah. I wish it was. But man, when it is, that's the magic. Yes. That's what you see when someone is doing like funny improv, where everything just is like, you're like, how did they pull that all together? Like, that was amazing, or the music when people are riffing in jazz and it all just makes sense, So that's another way of the spectrum of pausing, is when you're back at that analogy at the bottom of the wave, you're just trying to get one breath. Yes. You can't even get up to see it, but it's just that one breath in that moment. Yeah. And it might be the next moment that needs another breath. Like, it could be a second by second thing there. And then there's the expansive pause where you're in the middle of it and you can just see it. And it's all just making sense. And it's all working in your favor. That's what we call, like, the universe is just at your side. It's got you. And you're just going, and just ride that wave. It's pretty epic. And then, if you fall, you're like, okay, cool. I learned something from it. I can get back into it. But that to me is riding that wave in that pause. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's, as usual, so many things running through my head right now. But, so what are tools you use? One of my favorites is I try and take a breath every time I change rooms. You talked about taking the step back. Yeah. For me, it's having that brief pause through a breath or a couple of breaths, 3 if I can, every time I'm transitioning into something else. So that when I'm stepping into that place, I'm at least kind of leaving behind whatever I had coming there and stepping into whatever I'm doing. So for example, before we started, I took one of those big deep breaths to just kind of transition into our time together. Or if I'm going into a meeting as I'm entering the door, I'll do that deep breath to represent that shift from one place to another, and start that with a pause is one of the things I like to do. Another thing I did this morning was I went to see the sunrise, and just pausing in the morning to soak in the sun and be thankful for the day. And just, even if sometimes at home, I have 1 minute to do it, and I open the curtains, and in the morning, the sun shines right into the room, and it's like, there it is. Thank you. And that's maybe all it is. Yeah. And there's other mornings like this morning where I could spend 10, 15, 20 minutes with it and really be in that moment and pause with the sun and with the start of the day and things like that are 2 tools I love to use. Are there any more? For you, it's that kind of step back sometimes. Yeah. And the other thing is, so we talked about before, but intention is big for me. So I write intention. I typically start every morning and write down an intention in the present moment. So the big thing with intention is not I hope or I want or I wish. It is I am. I am calm. I am creative. I am showing up to the day with optimism and joy, whatever it might be. I will sit down and write. I write it. You can see it in my calendar. It's every day. And I do that when I'm working with clients. I will write my intention before I walk in. I always write it in before a meeting, especially if I'm, struggling with my team. I really will write an intention just to get it back in there. Before we started, we created our intention. We went back and looked at what we were doing. So intention is the big one for me, and then gratitude. Yeah. So gratitude, I know it's a big buzzword. People are probably sick of hearing intention and gratitude, but I could not say enough about gratitude, because even when I'm struggling and it is hard and I'm in my dark, I have to just write it down. I have to just look around and just 3 little things, 4, whatever it might be, even one, I will look around and be like, what am I grateful for in this moment? Just right now. Yeah. I'll go to like, okay, I have legs. I am walking. I have my arms. I'm able to write. I have my vision. If I can't look around me and see gratitude, I have to go with what's working within my body. So that gets me back to that here and now. And then I start looking around me. I look at my kids, because they just do things all the time that are just awesome, and I look at where I am. I'm in a really beautiful place in this world. I am in the mountains. I can walk into nature. I don't have to find nature. Nature's like all around us here. So that's a big gratitude thing. And I am very aware of how much we have in abundance. So it's really easy to just look outside the door and be like, hey, dumbass, you're pretty fucking lucky, excuse my language, but we're pretty lucky here. Get back into this moment and see what you got, and then work from there. So my 2 big things are intention, gratitude, and then when I can, I go back to what I was saying, that Gestalt philosophy of like getting up and moving. Just see it from a different perspective. We've talked about in shamanic traditions, Wiccan traditions, all these different, seeing it from different perspectives. In shamanic, it's seeing it from the eagle, seeing it from the snake, seeing it from jaguar, seeing it from Mother Earth, Father Sky, like whatever it is, whatever your tool is, who cares? Just use it. Use your different perspective. Get on the ground, lay on the ground, look up at the sky, whatever it is. There is no right way here. So Kirsten and I love to play. We'll try anything. We literally try anything. So I'm like, oh, cool, let's lay on the ground. Oh, let's try this. We're doing this because we want people to see that we don't have the magic elixir. The only elixir that we've noticed that's really powerful is playing and creating. That's what we've noticed. So that's what we keep coming back to. And those words have all this lightness and airy-fairy stuff to it. But
they're not.
Even when we're in the thick of it, we're still playing. We're trying. We're looking at it. We're doing different perspectives. We're calling each other. We're calling on things to help us when we don't want to get out of bed, when it's really hard to show up the next day and feed the kids and go to work and just get out. Please make no mistake. We are in our human bodies too, and we are in our human experience. And there are days where we are in the mud, yes, and it will not come off. So it's just that constant awareness of like, it's always changing. We're mutable, we're changeable, and we can get through it in different ways.
And I think what has been so powerful for me, again, coming back to play and creativity, is that to play and to create, most of the time you make a mess first, right?
Yes.
So that mud, those rough days, when I can look at those and go, oh my gosh, like just lift my head up that little bit to realize I'm in the mess.
Yeah.
And that's as part of creating and playing. And if I start figuring out what to do with this mud instead of just feeling covered and tormented by it,
Yeah.
maybe I can create something out of this. My friend Peter, who's no longer with us, God bless his soul, but he used to say to me, things come towards you when you walk.
Yeah. I love that.
Such a powerful thing for me. I still have it written on one of my chalkboards because every time I see it, I am reminded by what happens when we just, to your point earlier, start to move. And that little shift, it can be one tiny little step. I mean, we've been going and watching sunsets and sunrises when we're here in Florida, and even what you see in the sunrise or the sunset and how the view changes from just a step or two is sometimes mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So it comes out from the cloud because you went 2 steps over, or it's behind a tree here and then 1 step and it's not, or whatever it might be. And so that thing's coming towards you when you walk. And I'm thinking about ways, like we could probably put things come towards you when, and even have a blank there.
Yes.
When you have gratitude, when you set intentions, when you are moving, like,
yep.
I think some other things that also help things come towards you that we can play with. But
yeah. And the wave analogy is so good because I often say this in groups, and it's so true in creativity too, but when we're riding the wave, we are not journaling about it. We're not calling our therapist about it. We're not like taking a pill for it. We're not trying to like, oh my God, what is going on? We are just riding the wave.
Yes.
But now when we are in the ebb, when we are in the bottom and we're crashing, we are trying to figure it out. We're trying to get a therapist. We're trying to journal about it. Whatever you do, whatever your things are, we anchor it.
Yeah.
So the beauty of that analogy of the wave is that, and the metaphor of it is, if you let it flow, it just keeps changing. Waves are always changing. Sunsets, sunrises, our perspective is always changing. So when we get an either or, that's when we know. That is such a great indicator in your mind. If you are like, there's only one option here, this is such a great moment, because then you can be like, oh wow, I'm not seeing it. Because there is never just one way. I promise you, there's not one way out. There are multitudes of ways to move through things. So it just means, let's not put so much on when we're down, when we're being crashed in the waves. Like, okay, notice it. I'm being crashed here. What can I do? Maybe I just need to flow with it for a little bit. It's going to move on, and joy is going to move on, and happiness moves on. It just keeps moving. And that's where, if you can just pause and notice, like, wow, things are really good right now. How fascinating. Oh gosh, things aren't so great right now. How fascinating. Just going with that's bigger than any of it,
I think too, and I have to think about this, but I think I'm just realizing in this conversation that a lot of times when I'm feeling crashed by the waves, it's when I'm not making choices.
Yeah.
When I'm either feeling like everyone else is making the choices for me, or I am actually choosing not to choose and keeping myself in that place. I was talking with my goddaughter about this the other day. I call it the in-between, right? Where I've got like one foot in one place and the other, and I really haven't chosen either. And so that's another thing to just kind of, when you're taking that pause and you're grabbing that breath when you're under the waves, to think about is, wait a second, what am I not choosing right now that might lift me out of here?
Yeah.
Because I think it's true. I think when I'm really getting tossed around, it's usually because I am choosing not to make some important choices. And that's what's tossing me around.
I concur. And I think the choosing is so big, because you're choosing to be a victim, or you're choosing to be, the perpetrator, that good old triangle of perpetrator, rescuer, victim. That's when I'm getting tossed around as well, is that I'm like, oh my gosh, woe is me. Everything's against me, or I really need to fix this and save this. or this is the way it's got to be done. Like when I get firm in a thing and I think my way is the absolute right way, then that is these are just great indicators to notice about yourself. Yeah. Where are you just concreted in something? And just look at it from a different perspective. I love that, Kirsten. I think that's it is choosing. And sometimes we can choose one way and then we might just totally fall and fail. And that's okay. Get up, choose a different way. You just learned something, Art is such a great example of this. Like, you're constantly making choices in art all the time. And some of them work and some of them are just, it's terrible. And you just have to let it go and choose a different way.
Yes.
I love that. I think that's a good one.
Did you ever watch the 100% rule video that I sent you?
Oh gosh, I think I did. It's been a long time though.
Okay. So it's a TED Talk and it's called the 100% rule. And it's one of I think he considers himself a life coach, and I'm going to blank on his name right now. And I'm sorry, we'll put that in our resources somewhere. But he has a TED Talk called the 100% rule. And that was a game changer for me in terms of thinking about these decisions, and even decisions we're making where we maybe are 99.5% in, how that 0.5% that we haven't completely committed to in that decision can actually really mess us up.
Yeah.
And so we can maybe talk about that one next time more, but I just want to make sure to capture that thought for people, because that was one of my game changer things that I watched, and it helped me take what I thought I was doing pretty well and take it to a whole new level. And it's been a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah. And that was Benjamin Hardy.
Yes.
That did that.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's a really good segue, because I think what we would like to look at is that choosing. What are we choosing into?
Yeah.
And where are we 50-50? Where are we 70-30? Where are we 90%? And just a little 10%? Like, what are we choosing not to show up all the way for? And how is that impacting how we're moving? Because it's true. I think that was really profound. We come together in these spaces, Kirsten and I, and we will start talking through things and looking at things and playing with things. And then all of a sudden we're like, woo, that one rang a little truer than others. So I do think what is so hard about all this is that it is a choice. And that's really hard. It just is, like, because it feels like a lot of times when things are hard that we're not choosing it, or we wouldn't ever want to choose that.
Yeah. But
how we show up to it is a choice.
Yes.
And especially when you've had loss, when you've had betrayal, when you're in the gutter or in depression, it does not feel like a choice. So we want to honor that. We absolutely want to honor that. However, we also want to say how we show up to all of that. There is a level of choice in it. And I'm being really gentle with this, because I want to honor those dark, shadowy places where it doesn't feel like we have a choice.
Yeah.
Whether we were born into something or something has happened to us that feels like, are you kidding me? I didn't choose that. I totally honor, and my heart is with you 100%.
Absolutely. What
we are curious about and what we have on offer is, how are we going to choose to get up the next day or show up the next minute? How can we choose into other options and look at it that way?
Yeah. No, I love that. And one of the things that has helped me in those times is asking myself, what would the best version of myself, the best me I could ever possibly be, how would she handle that? How would she show up to that?
Yeah.
And what that has done for me is, sometimes when I want to act out or scream or, whatever it might be, and sometimes that's still the right thing to do. But just, okay, so if I was to bring the very best version of myself to this situation, what would she do? And maybe I can do 2 of those things, not all 10 or whatever it might be. But in some of those dark times that doesn't work. But that
Yeah.
I feel there too.
And just, in those dark times, it could be just choosing someone to be there, choosing, it doesn't have to all be it. I mean, it pretty much is an inner job. Unfortunately, it's like all from within. But there are times where we need someone to help pull us out.
Yes.
And the choice of calling and the choice of us, like if we see someone in pain, this goes back to the beginning of turning toward, instead of walking by. That's a big thing. How can we turn towards some things that might be hard for us? And you don't have to have answers. It's literally just showing up and be like, I don't have the answers. I don't even know why I'm here, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And I love you. And that's all I need. So
I love that. And I want to celebrate our 100% because we have talked about doing podcasts forever. And we have created this space and we are showing up every Tuesday, even if we're stuck in snowstorms or not feeling well or whatever it might be. And I'm so excited for that. And it's been really fun to see what we've been able to create by like truly showing up and doing, like making the choice to do this 100%. So thank you for doing
Thank you. Thanks for being there. And if anyone is ever listening, I'm just so grateful that we're just doing it anyway. It could just be just us playing together. But what we've noticed, and this might be something also when you're choosing how you choose to have conversations, Kirsten and I have had so many conversations, but when you show up in this kind of manner, there's a level of just seeing things in a little different way that you might not have noticed before. And so it just gives us a way to also look at all of these ideas that we always have going in our minds and seeing how we're choosing them in each moment. So I think the big thing for this next week is, what are you choosing? Yeah. And whether it's with your time, whether it's with energy, family, relationships, just like we say, play with it.
Yep.
See what shows up.
Notice it.
Just notice it.
You don't even have to do anything with it. Just notice it. And if you do want to play with it, yes, play with it. I love it. Awesome.
That could have a lot of entendres, double entendres to play with it. But we're all for it.
Love it. Okay.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you next week and see where we go.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
Thank you.